are the party of James. They're not just some old Jews from any old place. They're Jews within the movement. Why would anyone outside the movement care what's happening in the Christian church, or whatever you want to call it, in Antioch? I don't think that they particularly do. The people that care about this are the ones in the so-called movement, or what I would call the Messianic movement. Well, this is another one. And they saw that some of the disciples ate bread with defiled hands that are unwashed. That is, they weren't keeping purity regulations. Remember when Paul says to Peter, you know, in Galatians 2 again, previously you were willing to eat with the Gentiles, meaning they didn't wash their hands and things like that, and so you weren't keeping purity regulations. But when the son from James came down, or the party of the circumcision, you withdrew, and Barnabas copied you in this hypocrisy. Barnabas parted from me and went with the James party. I've read you that now 3 or 4 times, so that's probably the most important passage in the whole New Testament for understanding what is going on in the early history of the church. And so if you haven't read Galatians 1 and 2, which read all of Galatians, and all of 1 Corinthians, Romans is harder to understand, but you can plug the materials in Romans into Galatians and 1 Corinthians pretty easily. It's a little more guarded. It's like Paul is aware that someone is watching what he's writing, and he's a little more careful in how he expresses himself. So anyway, just giving you a possible, I don't say you have to agree with this, I'm just giving you a possible understanding of what's going on here. Okay? So, you remember, so then I also told you that episode where Augustine wrote Jerome in the 5th century. Jerome was where? Jerome is the real Orthodox leader of the early church intellectual cadre. Jerome lives in the late 300s, early 400s. He's functioning in Bethlehem. He's gone there from Italy. He's an Italian Christian individual who's gone to Bethlehem, and he works on manuscripts like a monk. And he's there for 40 or 50 years collecting manuscripts. He's seen Dead Sea Scroll material, I think. And he also compiles his version of the Latin Vulgate. He's the one responsible for the Vulgate that the Catholic Church uses to this day. He's a very intellectual, very intelligent person. So Augustine is a new Christian, come in from Manichaeism in North Africa, and he writes Jerome in one of his letters, and we have a copy of that letter. He says, like any new person not understanding some of these matters, he says to Jerome, "How dare Paul call the holy and saintly Peter a hypocrite?" Well, you know, Paul's pretty aggressive. I mean, I was kidding with my wife the other night. We speak of charity, love. I've been on a lot of radio interviews for my book, and people call in and just keep on saying love, 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 love. Okay, we all love. We all want to love. But then they have this this apostle here who's actually not full of any love whatsoever. And, you know, he's full of aggression, anger, a lot of hatred, I think, jealousy, vindictiveness, and he certainly doesn't love his enemies. He doesn't love his enemies. He does anything he can do to undermine any of the people opposing him within the movement. And he hasn't got an ounce of human feeling for those who oppose him whatsoever. In fact, I don't mean to be cruel about this, and I know, and my wife and I just marvel that people think this is a saint, but that's the point. When a person becomes a saint in the 2nd century or 3rd century AD, and remains a saint for 1,800 years, no one 2,100 years later thinks to question it anymore. Because first of all, they don't read his writings themselves, they filter it through the 2nd and 3rd party. So even if they saw something upsetting in his writing, they would be like, oh, Augustine here, well, hey, am I missing something here? And then they would promptly go and forget it. They say, well, everyone says Paul's a saint, wonderful person, therefore he must have been, now why did anyone question this? And the same with Eusebius. Eusebius is Constantine's bishop. I've told you this several times now, but if you didn't read him yourself, you guys have, I think, in your other classes. If you didn't read him yourself, you wouldn't know this about him. He is full of hatred, anger, and vindictiveness. There is not an ounce of love in this person. You know, so I mean, when I hear people talk about charity, love, you know, loving your enemies and so on, oh, these are noble thoughts. But none of these early founders of the church as we know it ever embodied them. You say, well, we fall short. We're all sinners. Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. But you read the first book of Eusebius, he revels in the people of Jerusalem eating their children. He loves it. This is their payback for their crimes against our Savior. And he just, you know, dwells on it with such, you know, thrilling, bloodthirsty joy that it really is repulsive. That's all I can say. Sorry to get carried away here, but that is what is there. And then people say, oh, this is, no. That's why I say any true Christian, anyone who really cared, anyone who loved Jesus would want to get to the bottom of some of these issues that have caused the kind of killing, inquisitions, murder, burnings, and final Holocausts that we've seen over the last 2,000 years. I don't say Christianity is bad at all. It's a beautiful doctrine. It's the essence and the richness of the whole Greco-Hellenistic Roman prayer, the highest form of behavior embodied in this God-man individual. That's fine, but if it's got these kernels of other things floating around in it, you know, like if it has some evil demons there floating around in it, then any good Christian would want to get rid of these things and would want to find out what they are and you know, purify. So if you love all mankind but you hate one people, well, I don't think you, and in fact, if it's the Lord's person people themselves and they've gone through every hell you can imagine, from inquisitions to Holocaust and burning, then I know that there's something that has to be done there. And I'm sure he would expect it. And certainly, and I'm sure that if he were alive today, he would say to some of these people, I do not know you. Get thee behind me, Satan, or whatever he's pictured as saying in these Gospels. He would say it as sure as I'm standing here today. And this is one of the sections he would say it. And that's why I'm so incensed and tense about it. Because here you see what they're doing here. They're all worked up, and the reason I know it's not a Jewish person writing this is because the Jewish person just accepts that, you know, you wash your hands before eating. It's part of the, you know, Mosaic oral legal tradition, and it was just